There's nothing quite like a good old jolt to the system, is there? You settle comfortably into the status quo. You're activating your open world towers, you're looking at the rarities of loot in your inventory, you're cracking packs and progressing through battle passes. And then this game comes along out of nowhere that just refuses to play by the rules. It gleefully tears up the precious status quo and revels in its weirdness. And it might be a little rough around the edges, but you can't quite take your eyes off of it. 2024 had a surprising number of such games, and here we're going to talk about a few of them. Slitterhead. There's an abundance of horror games out there in our current market, but few of them, or more precisely, none of them, are anything like Slitterhead. Coming from Silent Hill, Siren, and Gravity Rush creator Keiichiro Toyama's new indie team at Boca Game Studio, Slitterhead is undoubtedly a flawed game, and probably not to everyone's tastes. It does tout a fascinating core premise and body-swapping gameplay hook, however, which makes for one of the most unique action horror experiences in recent memory. Yes, there are a dozen different ways it could have been a better game, but even in its current state, Slitterhead has an undeniable, if very specific, appeal to it. UFO 50. Mossmouth's UFO 50 was in development for a while, but it definitely proved to be worth the wait. Of course, what drew many to it in the first place was its unique premise, because this is no simple compilation. UFO 50 boasts 50 different games touting different experiences, from co-op to single-player, from RPGs to adventure games, from side-scrollers to arcade games, and the game contextualizes all of these as games developed by the fictional UFO Soft over multiple hardware generations in the 1980s. Playing these fictional, retro games, all of which are legitimately excellent in their own way, and being able to string together an overarching story with UFO Soft and its growth as a developer makes for one of 2024's most fascinating experiences. World of Goo 2. The fact that we randomly got a direct World of Goo sequel out of nowhere more than a decade and a half after the original game came out was strange enough in and of itself. But of course, given the long gap between releases, World of Goo 2's gameplay will also have taken many by surprise, owing to the lack of familiarity with its predecessor. Either way, you don't get a lot of side-scrolling puzzle platformers revolving around building structures with blobs of goo, so it's fair to call World of Goo 2 an unusual game at the very least. The Hungry Fly. A story-driven horror game that you play from the perspective of a fly that's buzzing through a rancid swamp and scavenging on corpses. Well, with a core premise like that, you can't help but pay the Hungry Fly some attention. What helps the game stand out, however, is not just its weird premise, but the fact that it's actually building a genuinely engrossing game around it, weaving a surprisingly captivating story, boasting strong mechanics, and touting impactful player choice moments. Hungry Fly ranks as one of the most bizarre yet fascinating games of the year. Animal Well. Animal Well stands out in a number of ways. For starters, Animal Well has zero combat, and that in and of itself is pretty uncommon, which makes the core exploration and traversal loop take on a very different pace. Then of course, there's the game's aesthetics itself, which brilliantly combines stellar lighting, particle effects, and pixel art to create an incredibly unique look. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is as weird as the name makes it sound, which is to say, it's an extremely unusual game. A lot of that is, of course, surface level, with its striking art style and aesthetic, which make the game instantly stand out in memory. Beyond that, however, its unique mechanics, dripping atmosphere, and excellent story all contribute towards an indelible impression that it leaves, and also make it one of the most wonderfully strange games of the year. Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. There has never been, and never will be, a Yakuza Like a Dragon game that cannot be called weird. The series revels in its wackiness, and with Infinite Wealth, it's fair to say that it was at its wackiest best. From hilarious yet mechanically addictive minigames like Sicko Snap and Crazy Delivery, to an entire Animal Crossing-style island management activity, from typically unhinged side quests and gleefully over-the-top cutscenes to the ridiculous and slapstick elements the series loves to inject into its combat. Infinite wealth is bursting to the seams with things that make it stand out from the crowd.
Don't underestimate.
俺の番だな。行くぜ。放電準備。
Flock. Any game where combat is not only not your primary means of engagement, but entirely non-existent is a rare breed, and Flock is entirely built around being as zen and relaxing as possible. With no combat to worry about, the game sees players flying through a colorful and gorgeously artistic world while gathering and shepherding flocks of flying creatures. The point is to take in your surroundings and enjoy the vibes, which means it's not going to be for everyone, but those who do like it will find plenty to love. Squirrel with a Gun. Squirrel with a Gun gives you exactly what it says on the tin. And if you don't think it's weird to play a game where you play as a squirrel terrorizing a human neighborhood with fully human-sized guns, I'd love a detailed account of the armed squirrel-infested planet that you hail from. The game also does a great justice to its premise by building fun physics-based platformers around it, so that using the ballistics of the various weapons you get your tiny paws on help you traverse the world, always remaining a highlight. Though the game has its issues, it's also a surprisingly enjoyable time with a hilariously unique premise. Thank Goodness You're Here. One look at Thank Goodness You're Here is enough to tell you that it's certainly not an ordinary game. But the more that you learn about it, the more you realize just how weird it is, and in the best way possible. Cole Supper's adventure game boasts some of the most spectacular writing and incredible humor we've seen in a game all year, if not much longer. Bizarreness is built into the very fabric of the game, and it uses it to great effect, crafting one of the most memorable gaming experiences of the year. It's a bit too short, but even in its 2 to 4 hour runtime, it stands as one of 2024's most fascinating games.
And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at GamingBolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.